Hello, my name is Evie, and welcome to another podcast of Zen and the City. Following up from my last video about changing careers, I have to tell you that if you're also changing careers, I'm here for you. I hear you. I feel you. It took me 1 year with a couple of months break in between so that I don't burn out in order to make it and reach my goal of changing careers. Woo! Insert applause here. Thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, it's been a year and I decided to make this podcast to look back and then see what I learned in this year, maybe share my story with you in case you find it useful. So yep, here I am, and I have to say that changing careers requires constant effort. You have to put in all the work. You have to do the work. If there is no work, time, sweat, and tears, there's gonna be no change. There's gonna be no result. So it's a conscious decision that you have to make, and you have to be ready psychologically and practically in order to have the time to put in all the time and the effort and reach your goal. Because the thing is, if you start and then at some point you stop trying, chances are you're not gonna be able to reach your goal. That's obvious, isn't it? Like the more you try, the further you keep going, the more chances to reach your goal and do what you set out to do, really. So my advice is, when you're starting on such a journey of changing careers, you have to have your priorities straight. You have to have your ducks in a row, as they say, which means that whatever else there's going on in your life, you have to assess that, whether it's a part-time job, whether it's another hobby, whether it's, I don't know, whatever else you're doing and it's taking up time and energy. You have to see how that compares to the efforts, the studying, or whatever it takes for you to find a new job in a new career field. If that's your number one priority, maybe it's worth, putting all of your time and energy in that first, and then everything else goes in the back burner. At least that's what I did. And it took me time to realize that, because I was holding on quite tight to other things I was doing, worrying sometimes about money or plans that I had to cancel in order to focus on what I had to do. But you have to do that, right? Otherwise, probably it's going to take you longer to reach your goal. It's not that you're not going to reach it. It's just that it's going to take you longer. So focus on the end goal. Remind yourself why you started in the first place so that you keep yourself motivated. And here's another thing for you to note. Somebody said this to me and I found it so useful. We have the perspective that it took me a year, right? For some people it takes 6 months. For some people it takes longer to change careers. But that doesn't matter. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves. The thing is, since it takes that long, you have to think of it as a marathon and not a sprint. repeat after me, please. You have to think of it as a marathon and not a sprint. This prevents burnout, obviously, and also it kind of cheers you up because you know that every little bit you do helps and it's gonna bear fruit in the long run. Even if it doesn't make such a visible difference to what you're doing right now, it does make a difference in the long term. And your effort, what you're doing right now, even if you learned a tiny thing, will help you in the long term. It's like a tiny Lego building block that is gonna help you build your skyscraper, kind of, if that helps you visualize. And it helps you keep in mind that since you're doing a marathon, sometimes you have to slow down. Some days might be shorter, some days you might be longer, sometimes you might put in longer hours, sometimes you might need the whole day off. Just give yourself that, because otherwise you can't keep going on forever. You're not a robot, right? The other thing that was super important for me, and tell me your opinion on that because I'm very curious to know. I had a big problem worrying about my previous life, my previous identity in quotation marks, in the sense that it was very hard for me to let go of the titles I had given myself in the past that were tied to what I was doing. And what I mean is, we are not our jobs. Our jobs do not define us, for most people at least. And you don't have to be only one thing in your entire life. So it was hard for me to understand that I could not be, listen to that. I could do a lot of things in this life and still be myself and still hold the knowledge of what my previous jobs entailed, so to say. So I can still be a yoga teacher. I can still be an English teacher. I can still work as a yoga teacher. I can still work as an English teacher if I want to, and I can work as a software engineer at the same time or at different times in my life, right? Nobody can take that away from you. You decide what you want to give your time to decide what job you want to do at the current point. And if you're not doing that currently, it doesn't mean that you're not that, because your job does not define you, as we said. So you still know how to teach, for example. You still know how, I don't know, to be a nurse or whatever you were doing before. And if you want, you can always go back to that. And whatever you're doing right now doesn't mean that this is for life and this is going to define you and this is going to be your image to the outside world, because that's up to you. It's how you present yourself. It's how you let yourself feel. So please let me know if you have ever thought about that when changing careers or professions or however you want to call it, because it was something that was very hard for me to let go and realize what's going on really in my mind. Right. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that in the process of career change, the darkest hour is always before dawn, which means that at some point, especially while job hunting, it's not the best thing, is it? So there's gonna be desperation, there's gonna be constant doubt of whether you're going to the correct direction, of whether you're doing it right, of whether you're doing enough. You're gonna be tired. There's gonna be a lot of stress. So the longer you go, the more these things are gonna get worse, probably. At least that's how it was for me. And it goes like, it grows exponentially, which is so bad. But you have to remember that this is the darkest hour before dawn. This is how it is before it gets better. And people kept telling me that. And at that point, I wanted to believe it, but there was something else that I was feeling, and it was so hard. Like, I wanted to believe them, but I wasn't feeling it at that point. But seriously, it's true, because sooner or later, you're gonna make it. It's just, it might be later at some points, and that's okay. You just need to have the strength to realize that, which is gonna help you keep going. And I know that it's not so much the physical tiredness you might feel, but it's mostly the mental fatigue and the toll that job hunting takes on your soul. Because let's face it, nobody ever said that job hunting is nice, it's exciting. It's not. It is not. It's an ugly process, which requires a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's almost like a full-time job. But you have to go back to base and remind yourself of your priorities, as we were saying earlier, and your end goal. So, the good news is that I did it! I finally did it! I still can't believe it. Seriously. It's been a bit more than a month, and I still can't believe that I made it. It was totally worth it. That's all I have to say. Looking back at where I was a year ago, I can't believe how far I've come. So you have to keep the bigger picture in mind. You have to ask yourself if this period of super extreme effort and stress, blood, sweat, and tears is worth it compared to the rest of your life. Do you think it's worth it? Do you feel that it's good return on investment? That's what I was trying to think and remind myself of while I was crying, being disappointed, frustrated, and all of that. I kept reminding myself that, what's this compared to the rest of my life? Is it worth it? Is it gonna give me, are the benefits gonna be outweigh the disadvantages, let's say? And every time my answer was yes. Last piece of advice from me is to keep your teachers close and your cheerleaders closer. And what I mean by that is, if I have one advice to give you, that's it. You might find a lot of teachers, some of them better than others, fair enough. And we live in the digital age. You can find all of the resources you want on the internet. But then I think to myself, where would I be without all the people who were encouraging me and cheering for me throughout this journey? Like, seriously, having people who are going to give you strength, who are going to cheer you up when you're frustrated with the whole process, who are going to remind you how far you've come when you don't even see it because you just see the tree and you lose sight of the forest. These people are invaluable. They are even more valuable than the teachers you have, because these are the people that are going to keep you going. And for me, it's what made all the difference. And thank you so much to all these people that had my frustration and my disappointment and tolerated me when I was complaining about how hard it is. And they had all this technical stuff that they didn't have to hear about. Thank you so much. So that's, if I have one advice, that's it. So this is all, I think, for now. Please share your story. And if you found this podcast useful or inspiring, feel free to subscribe, like this video, and maybe share it with your friends or share it with any people that you know are going through this, because I really needed to hear those things back in the day. And yeah, I'm so glad that it's out now. I'm so glad I did it and went through all of this. Thank you all so much for listening to this, and I'll see you next time. Bye.